Hey, Christy here from Loom Crafty Fiber Arts. Today I want to show you how to loom knit a stitch that I've designed. I'm calling the Filigree Stitch, and this is one of those changeable stitches. It's going to change and look different according to what gauge of loom you use, what weight of yarn you use on that gauge of loom, and I'm going to show you a few examples. This can be done in the round or flat panel. It needs to be done on either, if you do a flat panel, even number of pegs. If it's in the round, it needs to be done on an even number of pegs. So a loom with an even number of pegs in the round or flat panel. And I suggest that if you do a flat panel, that you add an extra peg on each end, which would be 2, which will still make it even, as long as your number here in between are even, as your turning pegs. And that way you'll get this nice chain edging as you work it flat panel. Now, I've been asked a little bit about this, where I've posted this in some groups on Facebook, and I want to zoom in a little bit here and see if this will focus. I did this on a 1/4 gauge Sandywood loom with a number 2 sport weight yarn. Let's see if I can, there we go. And it has really good stitch definition, and that's one reason why I call it the Filigree Stitch, is because it has this little area in between the raised purl bumps here that create that little design. And it almost has a brioche kind of look with the raised areas and then the knitting underneath. But anyway, it has a good stretch to it, but now the 2 on a 1/4 gauge is stretchy, but it's not real stretchy. And it would look really nice for like a scarf or something, or if you wanted something that has some kind of is slightly lacy looking. And the back side's not that bad either. The back side has this nice little design that if I was making a scarf, it wouldn't bother me if it showed on the back side. So you might could count it reversible. It just depends on what yarn you use and what gauge of loom. Now this is done in the round for my bulky lovers that love bulky yarn. And someone asked me if you can make a hat out of it, and you definitely can. As I mentioned, you can use it in the round. It's going to look different than this, but that's what it looks like in the round. I know it's kind of hard to see because this is a variegated yarn, but this is very squishy too, and it has some stretch to it, has quite a bit of stretch to it with this number 5 charisma yarn. And then last but not least, the last sample I made is made with cotton, 100% I love this cotton from Hobby Lobby. This is a 1/2 gauge loom, but I made this on a 1/4 gauge, KB 1/4 gauge loom. I think it was my sock loom actually. And this shows better stitch definition too. And you can see this has got a seed stitch in it, so you can see the seeding in it here and there. And you can see a little bit of the design here, and it's got a lot of stretch. That's why I call it the filigree look, because that's what it kind of reminded me of. And this will make a nice dishcloth or washcloth. So let's get started. I'm going to show you how to do this stitch. It's very easy. It's a 4-row repeat, and this is a 1/2 gauge. I'm using a number 4 worsted yarn just to show you how to get it started and how it works. So here's I'm kind of funny. I always want my tail yarn to the right. Okay, so I put my slip knot on, and let me see if I can zoom in. I can't get my zoom right on my camera. I'm just going to do a few pegs of even number. So there's 4, 5, 6. We'll just do 6. Now your cast on is your choice. I wouldn't do an E-wrap cast on because you want something that's going to be tight and neat. So I'm just doing a purl here, cast on. Then we'll get started on the stitch. Well, I mean a garter cast on. I'm doing a purl stitch is what I meant to say. Okay, so my cast on is done, and the first row, if you are a beginner or if you've been loom knitting a while and you're familiar with the knit and purl, then you know what the seed stitch is. And the first 2 rows is seed stitch. So the first row, you're going to slip your first peg, which means you ignore it, you don't wrap it. And then you're going to knit 1, which is the E-wrap knit stitch, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, and you would just keep doing this however long you're doing your project or in the round. And then I always U-wrap my last peg so I get that nice clean chain edge. And that's the first row of the seed stitch. The second row of the seed stitch, you will go, all right, this was a knit, this was a purl. I'm reviewing the first row, knit, purl, knit, purl. So the second row of the seed stitch, you do exactly the opposite of what you did before. So your last one here, you purled, so you will knit it. Do the E-wrap knit stitch, and then you will purl, and then knit, and then purl, and then the last stitch you're going to U-wrap so you get that little nice clean edge. Okay, that's your first 2 rows. Seed stitch. Knit 1, purl 1 the first row, purl 1, knit 1 the second row. Then we're going to fall into my rice rib stitch. That's the 4-row repeat. So if you've never done the rice rib stitch, it consists of 1 row all purl overs, and then the next row you wrap 2 and purl the second one, and I'm going to show you. So this is a 3rd row. To do a purl over, you wrap around, scoop up from the bottom, pull your loop down, and flip it back on the peg, just like that. Let's do that again. Wrap around like an E-wrap. Now you might see this. You might see the purl over done with the flat knit across, but I'm using the E-wrap knit stitch for this. So you scoop up from the bottom, pull your top loop down your working yarn, flip it back over on the peg, and tighten it up a little bit, but don't make it real tight because it'll be hard to flip over for your next row if you do. So you do that for the whole row. And then of course we're going to U-wrap that last peg. Okay, now for the 4th and final row, we're going to wrap 2, a big old E-wrap around 2 pegs. I'm going to knit them off. Then you're going to purl the second peg, and you want to purl the peg in the direction that your working yarn's going. Whichever direction you're going is the peg you want to purl. So purl this peg, take that loop off, put that loop back on. Wrap these next 2, knit off, lay your working yarn between those 2 pegs you just knitted off, purl that second peg, and then U-wrap the last one. That's all there is to this stitch. It is the first 2 rows is seed stitch, the last 2 rows is the rice rib stitch. So, and I don't have enough done here so you can really see what it's looking like, maybe a little. But it will depend on, like I said, the yarn you use, weight, and the gauge of loom you use as to how it actually turns out. But this is a very versatile stitch. It can be used for a lot of, that's the back side, this front side. It can be used for a lot of different things, and it looks good flat, it looks good in the round, and the cowl I'm working on right now, it's going to be in the round, so you can see it's going to even look different with it because it's on a different gauge than this one. So I hope you like this stitch. If you do, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you like what I do here, and make sure you click on the little bell up in the right hand corner, because that bell notifies you of all my video uploads as they come in. If you don't click that bell, sometimes you won't get them. And that's all I have today. Have a great one. Bye bye.